How's everybody doing today? This is the second installment of 3 movie reviews for tonight. To the Black Guy's Guide to Movies, this is Rashad Woods, your resident black guy film movie reviewer, connoisseur, genius of film. Tell everybody I'm waiting to give my opinion. Um, this is my review of Lee Daniels The Butler. I actually just saw that at the theater tonight with the missus. Let me start off by saying that if you're interested in watching the documentary, it's definitely not it, but it's not here for historical accuracy. It's here to inform you, show the process of the civil rights movement, and more importantly, give you a sense of what one man's journey was in a loose interpretation. Now, for those that don't know, this was actually based on a gentleman by the name of Eugene Allen. He was a butler for 8 presidents, and he witnessed history from the White House. And what makes it more fascinating was the fact that he wasn't a political figure, but he had a front row seat to all of these events. Had a chance to meet a lot of different people, whether it was presidents, first ladies, cabinet members. And I'm sure as he served diplomats and various other world leaders, he had a front row seat, and it was the guys whose story, up until probably about a year ago, nobody really knew much about him. Now, this is a loose interpretation, so it's not actually, the character is not actually Eugene Allen in the film. It's actually, the character goes by the name of Cecil Gaines, played by Forest Whitaker, the always reliable Forest Whitaker, who does a phenomenal job of not only showing sympathy for the character, but also keeping him simplistic by knowing what his job description was, but also being aware that he's witnessing history and being conscious of the fact that he's a dedicated family man. So they did a fantastic job, I think, of really getting to the heart and soul of this character. It stars a who's who of Hollywood, the always reliable Oprah Winfrey, who's great in everything that she does. That's why she's had the success that she has. Lenny Kravitz, who the younger generation may not even know is actually a world-famous musician. Mariah Carey in a small role. Cuba Gooding Jr., really nice to see him back in some larger films. Glad he's not doing so much direct-to-DVD stuff. When he has a good script and a good director, it really brings out the really good sides of him, and I wish he'd do that more often. But into the context of the film was basically showing that Forest Whitaker's character, who he plays from about the age of about 34, 35 and up, goes from being a young man in the deep-rooted racist South to coming up to a young man who eventually works at a hotel in North Carolina. He's from Macon, Georgia, and then works his way up to the White House. He was actually founded at one of the hotels that he was working at in North Carolina to actually by one of the White House chief of staff, and he gets to go underneath President Eisenhower, Nixon, Kennedy, Carter, Ford, and Reagan as well too. And I think that this film did a good job of showing the progression of history and showing how hard people fought for the struggle for basic human rights. I think that I'm 30, and I think that the hard part is actually understanding that what I can do was not normal. I can go to the post office, I can go to any local restaurant, I can get in my car and pretty much drive undisturbed. For the most part, I think anybody has individual issues that they're dealing with, but for the most part, everything's pretty much normal based on who you are. And you really get to understand, particularly the scenes with his son, the difference between the two generations, whereas one has sort of had a mode of acceptance like the father, whereas the newer generation, his son, is starting to really have a chip on his shoulder based on his treatment. If there were certain things that were wrong with the film, I think, is that they could have portrayed his second son a little bit more in depth as far as getting to know the character. I think that he was kind of left a little bit out of left field a little bit, but it would have been nice to see some sort of exposing of his character and some of his motivations and how he felt about that. It also felt like, to a degree, that even though the scenes and the flashbacks were poignant and powerful, it didn't almost have the same effect whereas if you were watching a film almost like Spike Lee's Malcolm X, which was a little bit more robust in that theme, but maybe that wasn't the film's intention. It certainly didn't play it safe with the regards to the actual situation these people were going through. But I love the progression and the history of it. I think it's an important film about a man's story who probably would have never wanted to tell it himself because he seemed like a pretty quiet, unassuming guy. And there I was in the film, getting a chance to really know this individual's life and circumstances inside the White House. And it was most fascinating to me to know that just how far society has come. It's definitely a film that I'd highly recommend. It's not going to get the 4 do-rag mark, but it definitely gets 3.5. So this is my review of Lee Daniels The Butler. Talk to you guys soon. Here's my third review. Going to be The Hunting Party. Now,